In the ancient lands of Zuberi, where the mountains kissed the sky and rivers sang songs of forgotten kings, there was a village called Lomboko, nestled between dense forests and dry hills. Lomboko was a place of dust, whispers, and enduring traditions. The elders spoke of a time when kings ruled with wisdom and wore crowns forged by spirits. But to the younger generation, those stories were mere wind echoes of things that never happened. In this quiet village lived a boy named Tando. Tando had no mother, no father, no siblings, no legacy. He was the child of the wind and the soil. Or so the villagers said. An old blind woman named Mema had taken him in when he was just a baby. Found swaddled in torn cloth beside the shrine of the ancestors. While others feared him, called him a curse or an omen, Mema raised him as her own, teaching him to listen to the earth and speak gently to the trees. At 14, Tando was small for his age, with skin the color of polished clay and eyes that shimmered strangely in the moonlight. He wore clothes that barely held together and sandals made from palm bark. Yet his spirit was strong. Every day, he rose before the sun to fetch water, gather herbs, and help Mema with her healing work. But the village children teased him. The grown-ups gave him looks laced with suspicion, and the chief's sons made sport of him, often pushing him into the mud or calling him cave rat, a cruel jab at his unknown origin. Still, Tando never fought back, not with fists. His defense was silence. And when the pain grew too loud, he would run deep into the forest and sit beneath the great baobab tree on the hill, where he would sleep and dream, and his dreams were never ordinary. For weeks, he had been seeing the same vision, a cave with glowing walls, a crown made of gold and fire, a voice whispering his name, not the name Mema gave him, but something older, something powerful. The voice said, "You are not forgotten." One evening, as the village prepared for a harvest dance, Tando wandered toward the hills again. The skies were clear, the moon full and watching. He lay beneath the baobab tree, gazing up at the stars, wondering if the voice would return. Sleep took him swiftly, and in the realm of dreams, he stood at the mouth of a glowing cave. The voice returned, stronger now. "Come, child of kings. The crown awaits." He jolted awake. The sky had changed. Clouds gathered quickly, the wind howled, and the air smelled of rain. Thunder rolled through the mountains, and lightning cracked the heavens. He looked up and saw the baobab tree begin to shudder. With a deafening roar, a bolt of lightning struck the tree's base. It split open, revealing a narrow path, one that had never been there before. The wind seemed to pull at him, as though begging him to follow. Heart pounding, he took a hesitant step forward. Branches snapped under his feet as he followed the path. The storm raged above, but around him, the forest felt oddly silent. Then, he saw it. Nestled between two rocky hills, barely visible through the rain, was a cave. Its entrance glowed faintly, as though it held a light of its own. He stepped inside. The cave was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls were smooth and warm to the touch, inscribed with ancient markings that pulsed like slow heartbeats. He walked deeper, drawn by something he couldn't name. And there, the center of the chamber, resting on a stone pedestal, was a crown. It wasn't just a crown. It was a living thing. Gold twisted like flame, and embedded in the center was a jewel that flickered like a distant star. Tando's legs gave out. He fell to his knees. Tears streamed down his face, though he didn't know why. He reached out. The moment his fingers touched the crown, the cave exploded with light. He was no longer in the cave. He stood in a grand palace, walls lined with ivory and fire. Before him, a king sat on a golden throne, eyes filled with sorrow. A woman wept beside him, holding a newborn child. Guards stormed in. Blades flashed. The king fell. The woman ran, through forests, over rivers, holding the child close. She reached a village shrine and laid the child down. Then darkness. Tando gasped, stumbling backward, dropping the crown. He was back in the cave, breath shallow, hands shaking. He looked at the crown again. Was the baby in the vision? Him. He didn't know how he left the cave. The next thing he remembered, he was back under the baobab tree, the sun rising above the hills. He clutched something in his palm, the crown, but smaller now, like a trinket or charm, no longer glowing. He tucked it beneath his shirt and ran home. Memo was waiting. Her blind eyes turned toward him as if she could see his soul. "You found it," she said. He froze. "You knew. I hoped you would. The day I found you, the spirits told me. You were born of blood and betrayal. The earth buried your truth. But destiny cannot be silenced forever." Tando trembled. "Who am I?" "You are the last flame of a dying line," she whispered. "And the fire is waking again." Outside, the village stirred. But inside that little hut, something ancient had begun to shift. Tando was no longer just the orphan boy. He was something more, and the world, whether it was ready or not, was about to remember. The days that followed were filled with silence. Tando barely spoke. The crown, now shrunk to the size of his palm, remained hidden beneath his shirt, its faint warmth pulsing like a second heartbeat. He had stopped visiting the baobab tree. Instead, he spent his hours in Mema's hut, grinding herbs, boiling roots, and listening, always listening to the winds, the trees, and the voices only he seemed to hear. Mema, for her part, had grown more solemn. She told no one of what had happened. She simply watched him with her clouded eyes and whispered prayers beneath her breath. But the village began to notice. It started with strange occurrences. A boy fell from a mango tree, his leg twisted unnaturally. His mother brought him to Mima, who was out gathering roots. Tando took the child in his arms, murmured something in a tongue he didn't recognize. And within moments, the legs snapped back into place. The villagers gasped. The child ran home. Then came the fever. Chief Obika's daughter Nia lay dying. The village healer had given up. Even Mima said there was little hope. But when Tando entered the chief's compound, the air shifted. He knelt beside Nia's burning body, touched her forehead, and closed his eyes. The glow from his hand was soft, barely visible. But within minutes, her breathing steadied. Color returned to her cheeks. She opened her eyes. The chief wept. "What did you do?" he asked. Tot and Toe said only, "I listened." Words spread like wildfire. The orphan boy has powers. He speaks to the spirits. He's not one of us. He's something more. Some called him a blessing. Others called him cursed. The elders debated. The youth whispered. And far away, beyond the mountains, in the capital city of Bako, the news reached the wrong ears. In a chamber of obsidian and gold, King Najaru listened. He was a tall man with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. His crown sat heavy on his brow, forged in arrogance and fear. For 20 years, he had ruled with cunning and cruelty. He had no heir, no queen, only secrets. And one of those secrets was now breathing again. "The boy is alive," said his advisor. Injaru's face remained calm. "How sure are you?" He healed the chief's daughter. "He walks with spirits. The villagers say he carries a crown." "A crown," the king whispered. Then the cave has opened. The king rose, his cloak trailing behind him like a shadow. He turned to his guards. "Burn the village. Bring the boy to me dead or alive." Back in Lomboko, Tando sat beneath the stars, the tiny crown in his hand, whispering questions into the night. "Why me?" A wind stirred. "Because you are what they fear." He looked up. The voice had returned. not in his ears, but in his soul. It was the same voice that called him in the cave, the one from his dreams. Only now it was clearer. You were hidden for a reason. Now the world begins to remember. What am I supposed to do? He asked. Wait, the voice said. They are coming. That night, the forest grew restless. Birds flew in circles. The dogs barked without reason. Mima woke with a jolt. They are near. She said, Who? The king's men. His shadow reaches further than we thought. Before dawn, the soldiers arrived. They came like fire. Without warning, without mercy, flaming arrows flew into huts. Men were dragged from their homes. Women screamed. Children ran. Smoke rose into the sky like black thunder. Tando and Mema barely escaped. They fled into the forest with a few others, leaving behind everything. The crown burned against Tando's chest, as if warning him. They hid for days, no food, little water. But Tando remained strong. He led them through ancient paths. The villagers had forgotten. The animals did not fear him. The trees seemed to bend for him. The forest protected them after 7 days. They reached the ruins of Zema, the old capital of the first kings. There, surrounded by broken statues and vines, Tando heard the voice again. You must remember who you are. He collapsed in his dreams. He saw the truth. 2 brothers, twin sons of a king. One noble, one jealous. The noble one ruled wisely. His wife bore a son Tando, but the jealous brother, Enjaru, wanted the throne. On the night of celebration, he struck, poisoned the king, killed his brother, burned the palace. But one soul escaped, a woman, a midwife, the same one who had raised him as Mema. She had fled with the infant prince. She had hidden him in a forgotten village. She had protected him until now. Tando woke with tears in his eyes. Mima, he called. She sat beside him. You saw it? She said. I'm the son of the murdered king. You are the rightful heir, she whispered. I am Tando of the Flame Crown, he said. And from that moment, he was no longer afraid. The ruins of Zema were nothing more than cracked stone and ancient ghosts to most. But to Tando, they pulsed with a quiet hum, a rhythm that matched the beating of his heart. Each step he took among the broken pillars and moss-covered walls awakened something buried. Deep inside him, he was no longer hiding. He was no longer running. He had remembered who he was. Tando stood atop a crumbled platform where a throne once stood, the tiny crown warm against his chest. The air grew still. His companions, villagers who had escaped the burning, watched him with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Mema, he said, turning to her gently, why did you never tell me? The old woman sighed. Her eyes turned to the fading sun. Because the truth is dangerous, and a child should never carry the weight of a kingdom before his time. But the world has chosen to wake you now, and I can no longer protect you from what you were born to become. She removed a cloth bundle from her satchel. Inside, it was a necklace made of lion's tooth and firestones, the royal insignia, carved into the center. This belonged to your father, she whispered, the last true king. Tando took it, and something inside him shifted. He felt taller, stronger, not in muscle, but in spirit. That night, as the stars blinked too, life overhead, Mima gathered the villagers around the fire. Her voice, once soft, became firm and commanding. The voice of the royal midwife. Once sworn to silence, now sworn to truth. We are not only survivors, she said. We are witnesses. The king who rules now sits on a throne of blood. And the boy you see before you is the flame he could not extinguish. The villagers listened, wide-eyed. Whispers grew into words. Words became chants, and chants turned into oaths. They would follow Tando, but Tando was not yet ready to lead. The voice returned to him that night as he stood alone in the ruins. You must be forged before you can rule. A gust of wind blew through the ruins. The stones glowed faintly, and a hidden stairway opened beneath the old platform. Tando descended alone. Beneath the ruins, a sacred chamber waited. Its walls were carved with the faces of kings and warriors long dead. Fire torches lit themselves. As he passed, at the center stood a pool of dark water and 3 stone guardians, shaped like lions with wings. A voice not the one in his dreams, but deeper, older, spoke from the air. Prince of Flame, are you ready to be tested? Tando did not hesitate. Yes, the first guardian moved, then faced the trial of truth. The chamber vanished. Tando found himself back in Lomboko, but it was not real. The villagers surrounded him, pointing fingers, laughing, throwing stones. You are nothing, one shouted. You think you're a king, mocked another. He tried to speak, but his mouth wouldn't open. Then he saw Mima turn her back on him. No crown can change who you are, she said coldly. His knees buckled, but then he remembered. It wasn't real. He closed his eyes and whispered to himself, I know who I am. The illusion broke. The second guardian moved, faced the trial of pain. Tando stood in the fire now. Literal fire. His skin burned, his lungs screamed. Flames licked his arms, and memories of his village burning flashed before his eyes. The cries of children, the screams of his people, the heat of guilt. He wanted to collapse, but he did not. He took one step forward, then another. Through the fire, through the past. Through the pain, the fire faded. The third guardian moved, faced the trial of power. Now Tando stood in the royal palace, a crown on his head, gold at his feet. Servants bowed, women smiled, ministers clapped. You can have anything, a voice said. Just command it. He was no longer a boy, he was a king. He looked into a mirror and saw his uncle's face staring back. No, he whispered. I don't want this if I must become him. The palace crumbled. He was back in the chamber. All 3 guardians knelt. You have passed, they said as one. You are not the boy you were. You are the king you must become. Tando rose from the chamber hours later. The villagers gasped when they saw him. His eyes glowed brighter than ever. The crown around his neck shimmered with life, and the ground beneath his feet seemed to hold him with reverence. He spoke only once that day. We returned to the capital at dawn. They marched through the forests with purpose. Word spread ahead of them. Whispers carried his name to every hut, every market, every riverbank. Tando is coming. The cave prince lives. The true heir returns. By the time they reached the outskirts of Bako, others had joined outcasts, forgotten warriors, former nobles, and everyday people who remembered the old king with love and sorrow. The city guards were overwhelmed. They expected a rebellion, torches and swords. But what arrived at their gates was something different. Tando, dressed in plain robes and glowing with the light of truth, stood before the gates and called out, I challenge the king not with blood, but with the old law. The trial of voices. It was an ancient rite, one Najaru had buried, but not erased. It stated that if a lost heir appeared, they could demand a trial before the people, judged by the voices of the elders, spirits, and truth itself. The king laughed when he heard it, but he was no fool. He agreed. He thought he could manipulate it. He didn't know what Tando had become. The drums echoed across the capital city of Bako. As the people gathered in the central courtyard for an event many thought they'd never witness again. The trial of voices, it had not been invoked in over 2 decades. Most had forgotten its meaning. But the old ones remembered. They whispered it like a prayer, like thunder returning to the mountain. The city that once trembled under the shadow of King Naru now buzzed with something new. Folktale at the center of the courtyard stood a raised stone circle where trials were once held by ancient kings. The ground beneath was carved with ancestral symbols: eyes, flames, crowns, and chains. Each mark held power. Tando stood at one end, barefoot, robed in white linen, with the golden crown now fully restored and gleaming upon his brow. His skin shone with a quiet light, not from magic, but from the radiance of truth carried openly. At the opposite end stood King Najaru, tall, armored in black and gold, surrounded by his guards. His face was stone, but his eyes betrayed unease. The city was split. The noble class, still bound to Njaru's wealth, stood behind him. But the people, the workers, the farmers, the youth, the forgotten, they stood behind Tando. 3 elders emerged, the last remaining keepers of the Trial of Voices. They were men and women who had served under the former king Tando's true father. They had stayed silent, hiding in plain sight, biding their time. The eldest, a gray-bearded man with a staff made of ebony wood, raised his hand. "By the laws of our ancestors," he said, "the trial begins. Each challenger shall speak their truth, and the voices of the people, living and dead, shall bear witness. The one who is false shall fall. The one who is true shall rise." Tando stepped forward. He did not raise his voice. "Name is Tando," he said, "born of flame, child of the true king, slain in secret. Hidden by the loyal, raised in the dust, so I would not be killed. But the dust did not erase my blood. The wind did not carry away my name. I found the cave. I found the crown. I remembered." He turned slowly, his eyes sweeping across the crowd. "I do not come to conquer. I come to restore. I do not ask for a throne. I ask for the truth to be spoken. Let the voices decide." The crowd was silent. Not even the birds dared interrupt. Then, Njaru stepped forward. His voice was like a snake slithering through grass. "This is madness. Lies wrapped in dreams. This boy, he is no prince. He is an orphan, a forest spirit dressed in tricks. He speaks of visions like a madman. You would crown a mad child over a king who kept you safe. You would trade order for illusion." He turned to the crowd and raised his hand. "I gave you gold, roads, armies. This boy gives you stories." But no cheers came. The elder raised his staff again, then let the trial move to the second phase. He said, a bowl of fire was brought forward. A sacred herb was cast into it, releasing a thick, white smoke. One by one, the elders, then the crowd inhaled. The Trial of Voices was more than a performance. It was a spiritual calling. In silence, the smoke surrounded them, and the voices came at first, whispers, then words, then shouts. "He is the child. Saw the queen flee that night. He bears the mark of the first flame. He carries the soul of the fallen king." The spirits had returned. Ancestors long dead, guardians of truth, spoke through the smoke, and they did not speak for Njaru. The king's face twisted. Enough of this witchcraft. He lunged forward, drawing his sword. But Tando did not flinch. The crown on his head glowed fiercely, and the wind rose around him like a shield. "You killed my father," Tando said quietly. "You tried to kill me, but the land remembered. The cave remembered, and now the people remembered too." Guards moved in, but the people rose. Hundreds, thousands, blocking the soldiers, chanting one name: Tando, Tando, Tando. In desperation, Njaru raised his sword to strike. A golden light exploded from the ground. The spirit of the old king Tando's father rose from the circle. his form glowing with ancestral fire. His hand stretched toward his son, and with a voice that shook the heavens, he said, "My son, reclaim what is yours. Let no lie stand in your way." And Jaru dropped his sword and collapsed, trembling. The crowd surged forward, but Tondo raised his hand. "No blood," he said. "Let him live. Let him remember what fear feels like." The elders stepped forward and removed the crown from the Jaru's head. Then, turning to Tondo, they knelt, one by one. The people followed. Tondo stood at the center of the circle, the light of dawn breaking behind him, the city silent in awe. He did not smile. He simply whispered, "May I be the king they deserve." The kingdom did not change in a single day, but the wind that once carried ash now carried songs. Tondo, once the nameless boy of the forest, now sat in the palace of kings, not on a throne of gold, but on a seat of wood, carved by village hands, placed at the heart of the great courtyard. He did not build walls between himself and the people. He tore them down. Njar. You had been exiled to the outer hills, stripped of title, not of life. Tondo's decree had been clear. Let justice bring peace, not more vengeance. The people worked alongside their new king, not for him. The palaces were opened. The fields were made fertile with shared labor. Schools rose where prisons had once stood. Healing huts replaced tax stations. And at the center of it all stood Tondo, the boy who came from the cave. But even in glory, Tondo remained humble. He often walked barefoot through the streets, speaking to children, listening to elders, remembering names. He rebuilt the orphanage that once rejected him, not with stone, but with purpose. Every child who entered was taught not just letters, but value. Mema, now aged and frail, had been brought to the palace. She refused the silks and feasts offered to her. Instead, she asked for a garden and a mat near the fire. Tondo sat with her. Each evening, his head resting on her lap as if he were still a child. "Mema," he once asked, "do you think I've done enough?" She smiled, brushing his hair gently. "You did not find the crown, Tondo," she said. "It found you, Day, and you have honored it well." She passed one night under a full moon, her hands folded, her face peaceful. The entire kingdom mourned her, as a mother to them all. Her grave was placed in the garden she tended, and flowers bloomed there, even in dry seasons. Years passed, Tondo's name spread beyond the borders, not as a warrior, Patiza, but as the king of light. Tribes once divided by war now shared grain and stories. Merchants came from the east bearing silk, not soldiers. And yet, the crown never changed him. He refused to let portraits be hung. He wore the same robe each day. He listened more than he spoke. One day, as he walked alone in the old forest, now grown thick with peace, he came upon the cave again. Its mouth was quieter. No glowing wind, no visions, just stone and silence. Tan kneeled and whispered into the darkness, "I return not for power, but to say thank you." And from within the cave came a voice, soft, old, and kind. "You honored us all." He left a single carved staff at the entrance, the same broken stick he once carried as a boy, walked away, smiling. On the 25th year of his reign, a festival was held. Drums pounded. Dancers twirled. Children wore crowns made of vines. Fires lit the sky. Tondo stood atop the city's wall, looking down, not as a ruler above, but as a brother among. An elder approached him, a child Tondo once healed, now grown with gray in his hair. "King Tondo," he said, "you've built what none could imagine. But what will we do when you are gone?" Tondo looked up at the stars and replied softly, "Then you must remember the cave and what it gave. Not a king, but a chance to believe in one." When he passed years later, it was said the crown vanished with him, taken back into the earth. waiting for another heart pure enough to wear it. And the people whispered his name in songs, in stories, in every newborn child who reached for the sky. Tando, the boy who found his crown in a cave and never lost himself. Thanks for watching. Hope you liked it. If you watched till the end, please comment "end" so that we could understand you were with us till the end. As well as, please let us know, where are you watching from? Before leaving, please hit the subscribe button, comment your thought, and share with your nearest and dearest one. See you in the next one. Until to the next one, stay happy. Goodbye.